Hi guys, so today I will be talking to you about cannabis and stress. So this section of the presentation is going to address three questions. One, is cannabis used to combat stress? Two, is cannabis effective in combating stress? And three, how does cannabis combat stress? So first, let's talk about stress. Stress, we're going to say, is caused by life in general, school, work, money problems, family issues, friends, dealing with people. And then there's also stress that's as a result of anxiety disorders, where cannabis might be prescribed in order to combat stress. So a study looked at cannabis dependence in the general population versus people with clinically diagnosed disorders. And you can see that people with a lot of anxiety disorders have a higher cannabis dependence. Of note is post-traumatic stress disorder, which is the only condition that marijuana can legally be prescribed for. One of the main compounds found in cannabis is THC, and THC, after getting inhaled or ingested, essentially forms into endocannabinoids that circulate through the bloodstream and then go towards CB1 receptors. Studies have found that low doses of THC act on glutamatergic CB1 receptors, which leads to an anxiolytic function and the relaxation response. Essentially, that marijuana is most famous for. However, high doses of THC follow a different pathway. They actually work on GABAergic CB1 receptors, which leads to an anxiogenic function and causes actually more stress and anxiety. So it's kind of 50-50 depending on how much you're taking in. Cannabidiol is another active ingredient found in cannabis, and that acts on the 5-HT receptor, which controls serotonin release. At low doses, it enhances neurotransmission of it and therefore acts as an antidepressant. However, at high doses, it attenuates 5-HT neurotransmission and therefore acts as a depressant. And here, when we're talking about stress, an antidepressant would relieve stress and a depressant would kind of contribute to stress. So studies have found on humans that cannabidiol acts on the limbic and paralimbic brain areas, so that controls behavior, emotion, motivation, self-control, etc. So all the things that kind of lead to anxiety disorders or the feeling of being stressed. And then also studies have shown that cannabis has an effect on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis, that we've studied a lot in terms of stress. And it is found that adolescent cannabis users, people who have been using it for a long time as repeated users, have lower HPA axis stress reactivity in response to social stressor compared to people who have never used it before. So this study basically showed that if you are a chronic cannabis user, then your HPA axis is less reactive to a stressful stimulus. And repeated adolescent cannabis users also have lower HPA axis stress reactivity compared to people who have used it a couple times in their life. So that kind of illustrates that the more often that these adolescents have used cannabis, the less reactivity they have to social stressors. So, in essence, is cannabis used to combat stress? Yes, it is used mostly recreationally because the only way it can be prescribed medically is if you have PTSD. However, studies have shown that people do use it to address stress from other clinical anxiety disorders as well as people in the general population. 2, is cannabis effective in combating stress? The answer is usually, as the previous study showed, a lot of adolescents have lower stress reactivity with more cannabis use. However, if you looked at the mechanisms, which leads us into number 3, how does cannabis combat stress? So, like low doses seem to be better than high doses, especially THC, which regulates neuronal excitability, and CBD, which regulates serotonin release.